So, let's see how we can make a D&D fighting game. First of all, you need to download this project. You will find a link, of course, in the description below. And when you open it up and open scene 1, you will see this scene. Okay, first let's clear some things. The things we need to... There are two ways we can go about it with this. One way is to be code heavy and write everything with code, and the other and the easy and simple way is to be heavily based upon mechanism to do all the hard work for us, which of course I always prefer to do the simple and easy way, so we will focus more using mechanism. So inside this project you will see, of course, the scene. You will see a folder with animations, and these animations are just made by me from the sprites over here, so that we have something to work with. Okay, and these animations are made inside, we will talk a little bit later for inside the animator, but if you want to see the animations, you can click over here and select, and you can see how to make them. Now, if you want to make your own animation, there are a few things you need to keep in mind first. Now, I have my player game object where I have my rigid body 2D, and I have my colliders over here. Now, you don't need to have two circle colliders, but I'm just using it so because if you land upon an enemy, if it's a box collider, you might stuck in there and you might never fall into the ground. So I just use two circle colliders to do that. Now, as you see, and in your own project, there is no animator in here, but instead I created an empty game object with an animator, and actually it doesn't even need the sprite render over here, and inside that you will see another game object which has the sprite renderer, and all the animations are actually which sprite it will play. It's actually inside this game object. Now, for most of the basic animations like move, idle, jump, all the stuff that are not attacks, I've actually added an animation on the sprite position, not the animator's position, but the sprite position. This is pretty important. Okay, and that is because some of the sprites, if you go to the sprites over here, of course you probably cannot see it, but you see, if I select it over here, you see the center, it's about there in this sprite, and if I change it to an attack, you see that the center should be a little to the back, but since this is a sprite, the center of the image will probably be around over here, so you need to add to think that the center it doesn't move, so that it doesn't make. And now, as you see over here, this is the center, but when it plays the attack animation, the sprite, the center of the sprite, if we left it in the previous position, it will not look so good. So now, of course, you can, if you have better sprite animations, because my drawing skills are horrible, then you might have your center in the correct position, so you might not need to have keyframe on the position also. Now, or this will probably be more apparent as you see the idle is over here, but if we want to crouch, you see that we have to take the center of the game object also down. So that's for the basic animations, but let's see on the attacks. This is one attack animation, and if you go into damage colliders, you will see I have 3 game objects. You can have a lot over here, and right now they're missing a script. We will fix that in a bit. So this is just box colliders that they are triggers. If you're going to use raycast in your game, of course you will have to put this into ignore raycast. Okay, and these triggers are actually damage colliders. So if I open, let's open this one, but now I've added a a keyframe and I didn't want to do that. Now let's see, this is the first attack animation. If we move the keyframe to 10 seconds, you will see that it actually opens this collider. That means that we will use this trigger collider, and if we hit an enemy, and if there is an enemy collider over here, it will do his damage. It will do damage, and we can also insert a keyframe in the end of the animation so that it closes this the trigger collider. Now the other way you can do about this is, of course, open and close it through script, but of course that way you will have to count how many seconds is the attack animation, and you will have to do a lot of tests to find that, which of course is not that great if you have a lot of animation, a lot of attacks. Okay, so this is probably the easiest way you can go about it. And if I do another animation, you can see I've still open the same attack collider, and this one over here. But if I do a crouch attack, which is not that great right now, you will see that it opens a different damage collider. So this is basically the main idea behind it. We let the animations do all the work and open and close damage colliders. So it's based on the animation, what will happen and what we will do next, and we will see that in more it will be explained more and when we do the special attack. For right now, if you see, the special attack is just this. I forgot to paint one for special attack, so I'm using just a frame from the other, and as you see, it's just an empty frame. Now it's best that even if there is only one frame, only one sprite, it's best that you use one keyframe to the start and one keyframe to the end. Okay, so what things you need to keep in mind in this is make a game object where you will have the rigid body and the colliders that do collide with the screen. So we move our character from here, create an empty game object that will hold the animator, create a game object that will hold the sprite render, and create the game objects for the damage colliders. You can take the colliders over here and put them inside a different game object under the animator, and open and close them depending if you are crouching or if you are in the air and stuff like that. But I don't want to do this right now because I'll have to change some stuff a little bit. So the next thing we want to do is make all our players must have a player tag. Even if they are enemies, must have a tag that they are players. Now this is pretty important. You will see from the script why we do that. And the next thing, of course, we need ground to stand upon, and we've added a new tag of ground, and that is pretty important. So another thing I want to do before we start scripting is go to edit project settings and go to input. Now of course you'll see I've limited my axis into 8 into only 8. So we have the default ones are of course horizontal and vertical, but I've added a 1 to the end. Okay, and I named the fire axis. Unity has it as fire 1 and fire 2 by default, but I've added everything that every axis that has to do with my first player. Okay, I've added the one in the back of the name. So horizontal 1, it's how you move player 1, and horizontal 2, it's how you move the player 2. Okay, so you will see in the script why we do that. Now for player 2 I didn't spend my time changing and adding proper positive and negative buttons. Okay, I've only wanted the up and down. Now keep in mind that if you have alternative negative button and alternative positive buttons, then you will probably move the same player around with multiple keys. Now you usually don't see that in 3D fighting games because you might want to do local multiplayer. Okay, so you have to separate the keyboard and everyone will have its own keys. Now the settings are the usual ones you will find. Okay, now of course attack is 1-1 because we have one attack button and 1 is the axis that is the number that identifies which player's button they are, and attack 12 is of course that's probably should have been 21 because it's the attack of the second player. Actually, let's fix that, and this should also be attack 12. And let's make this to be tough D, and this we'll just leave it empty for now. You can add it. So this is for the axis, and that's pretty important to have the horizontal one, the identification number of the player to the end of our axis, so that we don't have to recycle a lot of code and for every player we want to have. And of course, if you want more attacks and more buttons, you can create with the same way more buttons like that. So that's enough with what we have to do with the editor and the axis. Now we need to go to the animator. Now don't be afraid if it's too bit of a cluster over here. Let's take them up one by one. So we have our idle animation. which is of course the idle, and this is a blend tree. And if you open up the preview window, you will see that we have a float movement, which is the parameter to how to move our blend tree on one dimension. So if the movement is 1, you will see that it will play the move animation. If it's 0, it will play the idle. Now back on our base layer, from our idle position we can either jump, and after we jump I wanted to add a falling animation, and you can see the parameters over here. So if we are not on the ground, then we are jumping, and if we are falling, if the falling is true, we return to, we play the falling animation, and when ground is true, we return to the idle. This is a basic looping cycle. So one thing to take into account, because these are sprites and most of them have pretty few keyframes, we use booleans in almost everywhere. Okay, and with the settings we unapply the hasX time, and transition duration we want this to happen instantly, so we zeroed up everything else. Now this only goes for not all the animations. So for instance, our attack 1 animation is the same when our movement is greater than minus 0.1. So that means, well, that actually doesn't mean anything. We don't even need this. And on this over here. So when the attack 1 boolean is true, we play the attack animation. Now if the attack 1 is false, then you have to wait 1 whole second before returning back, otherwise we will just be seeing him, we might not even spot the animation. Now because of course this is a fighting game and we want to do combos with this, we write through code the attack 1 animation when it's true. After a short period of time we turn it false. So if the player hits the attack 1 animation, the attack 1 button once again, it will reset the code, the timer, which sees how fast you hit the buttons, and the attack 1 will still be to true, so it will pass to the second attack, so it will start the combo. Okay, and this, for the second attack to return to the idle, it has to have both attack 1 and attack 2 into false. But if we are over here and we enable the attack 2 boolean, so the player does the combo, it will play the third animation, and only then it will play the third animation, and of course this will return back to idle. Now the same goes for crouch, okay, and crouch attacks. The reason I've given you the animator and the animation is to study this, how I made that, and make your own iterations, and I don't want to make all this from the start. It will take a lot of time and we are near 2 minutes and we haven't already fall into script yet. So the other thing we want to do, the last thing, before we will go in the end to the special attacks. Now, because probably we can take damage from anywhere, and whatever we are doing, we make transition from any state if the trigger of damage is triggered and we are on the ground, play the damage stand animation. Okay, but if we are in the air, play the damage fall animation, and of course then return to the idle. Now probably most games will have, especially from damage fall, will probably have another sprite and another animation. Now if you have another sprite, you don't have to make a new animator state. You can just create the animation and add the sprites over here. Of course you probably can't see anything. So that's basically what we have to do from inside Unity. And now let's dive into script. So I'm going to go to my script folder, create it if you don't have it, and I'm going to go right click, create C# script of course, and we will name this player control. Of course we have to open it before we edit it. Now let's start with our variables. First we need to add an integer, and we want this to be public, and this will be the player number. And of course this is how we identify our players, from which is our character and which is the enemy's character. So with that in mind, we can take a transform for the enemy, and you will see why we have to do that. Now we need some components, and of course we need the rigid body, and we need an animator, and this will be called anim. Now let's start with our movement variables. So of course we need the horizontal, the vertical, the speed we are moving. I'm just going to name it maximum speed, and I'm going to initialize that 25 right now. Of course you can, for your own colliders and stuff like that, you can change, you can find your own numbers. So, and of course we need a bool if we are crouching or not. Now of course, since we are moving with physics, we need to do this stuff inside fixed update, and we take the horizontal will equals input get axis horizontal. Now what's the problem with this? Of course right now there is not an axis called horizontal alone. Okay, we have horizontal 1 or horizontal 2, but if we do input get axis horizontal 1, we will have to make another one for horizontal 2 if we have a third player for horizontal 3rd, and for horizontal 4, and so on. Of course this is not something we want to do, so we take our player number and then return it to string, and that will make our horizontal to be horizontal 1, or if our player number is 2, that will make our horizontal to be horizontal 2. If you add a debug log with this over here, you will see that it will write horizontal and the player number. Now of course this will start from 0, and we don't have horizontal 0, so I'm just adding it, initializing with 1, so at least it will not give us an error. Now for the vertical, we will of course do input get access vertical plus player number dot to string and so on. So we have our inputs over here. We need a new vector3 since we are moving with forces, and on that vector3 we only want to pass the horizontal, and so this. Now since we are using rigid bodies this, we could also do that with vector2s, but force of habit, the force of habit lets me use it vector3. So for our crouch, we know we want to crouch when our vertical will be minus 0.1, and this turns the if statement into simply a boolean. So instead of saying this, instead of doing it this way, then you can simply write it this way and be done with it. So we now know when we are crouching. So let's see when we can jump. Of course we can jump when we press the vertical button. So if our vertical is higher than 0.1, and we actually haven't added the jump variables, so I'm going to skip this part and I'm going to go for the others first, and I'm going to say right now, if we are not crouching, then add force to the rigid body, so pass the movement multiplied by maximum speed. But if we are crouching, we need to manipulate the velocity of a rigid body to be 0, so we are not moving. Now some games, some dedicated games let you move around even when you are crouching, but I haven't made sprites for that, so I'm not going to use that. So the only thing you will need to do if you want crouching in your dedicated game is simply change a little bit this if statement. Now with what we have right now, let's go back into Unity, and if I hit play, and of course I forgot to add the script, and let's see inside the animator, let's hit play, and we get an error, and we of course get that error because we forgot because we forgot to make our start, to initialize our stuff inside start. So rigid body dd is get component rigid body dd. Now for the animator, we haven't added anything in the animator. We haven't added the animator inside our game object, but we have it on our children. So we need to get component inside from our the animator from our children. If we save right now, hit play, you can see now, never mind the animation, you can see that we can move left and right Okay, you can change the maximum speed, so how fast you can move or you don't move. And of course you need to play with the values over here. Okay, mass. Now gravity scale, don't mind that, we will change that. And if we do that in 1, we will actually be going faster even that. So let's go back into our functions over here. So we need a way to say we are on the ground or we are not. Let's go back into our variables and let's start adding some variables for our jump. Now we're going to have variable jump, so if we press it, for how long we are pressing the button for jump, the higher we will go. We need first a public float, which is our jump force, and I'll give it a 20 right now. We need a public float of jump duration, and I'm going to initialize it with 0.1. We need some internal variables for this, and for jump force. And now we need to add a boolean that we have pressed the jump key. Let's add it as jump key. We need a boolean that we know that we are falling. This is mainly for animation purposes. And we finally need a boolean that we are on the ground. Now, one way we can do to declare that we are on the ground or we are not is, of course, use the collision system of Unity. So we can create a void on collision enter 3D, collision 3D, and we give it a name of call. And inside over here we can say if the collider.tag tag equals ground, then we of course are on the ground. And on collision exit 3D, if the collider that just exited the collision is the collider which has the tag of, we have the collision, but we need the collisions don't have tags, the colliders have. Okay, so you need to do collision.collider.tag. So if the collider that we stop touching has the tag of ground, then we are on the air. So let's make a new function over here. Let's call this update animator, and we will store everything that has to do with the animator inside here. So we will create anim setBool, and we will say on ground will always be the same as this on ground. Let's add this on ground so that we do not confuse ourselves. Now of course this is not a function that is called by itself like update all the other functions, so we need to call it inside the update. Okay, and let's fix that. Let's put that in order. Update, not that it matters, but just for our organization. Let me delete all this also. So if I save now and go back into Unity, let's clear that, and if I hit play, you will see that nothing happens, and that nothing happens is because we are we're not on the ground, even though the on ground is true, but we have added to move to the animation that is falling only when the falling is true. So if I make this, let me bring that over here. So if I make the falling to true, you will see that it plays the correct animation. Now let's fix all that, and the way we're going to do that is we will go into our fixed update, and inside vertical where we left it before, we will say if the jump key is not now this could probably use a better name than jump key. So anyway, if the jump key is not pressed, is not true, then take our internal variables, which is the jump duration. Now notice let's write it first, and we start adding time.delta time. Now we are using the internal jump duration and not this one. This is the public. This is only for us and to see how much time we have. We can move upwards. So we also need to add to the internal jump force. Keep in mind this is very important to be the internal variable, and of course we add this with time.delta time. And now if the internal jump duration is lower than the public jump duration, then we can do changes into our velocity, and I'm using vector 2 right now, and we want to pass to keep the same velocity on the x, because we might be moving and hit the jump button, but we want to pass the internal jump force which we add over time. Else, if the jump duration is higher than our public jump duration, okay, then we will say jump key equals true, so it will stop adding to the velocity, and that is how you do the variable jump. Now, after our stuff over here, we will say if we are not on the ground and the vertical is lower than 0.1, that means we have jumped, but we are not pressing any buttons. Then the falling, we are falling. So with all this, we need to go back now into our on collision ender 2D, and we have to reset all these variables. So jump key, because we are on the ground, so the next time we will jump, everything will play normally. So when we touch the ground, our jump key will be false, our jump duration will be 0, our jump force will be our internal jump force will be the external jump force, and the falling will equals false, so we are not anymore falling. Now some coders separate which functions are internal and which are public by using an underscore over here if they are internal, or an underscore to the front if they are external. Now I don't use that because I don't know. So anyway, so now that we have reset all that, of course we need to inform the animator also that we have that he has animations to update. So if we are falling, then this falling will also notify. We can also do the crouch animation. This is pretty simple. Crouch, crouch, and we can of course pass the movement. So we will say anim set float movement, and we want to pass the horizontal, of course, so that he starts moving backwards. Now right now we have the same animation even if we are moving forward or backwards, because why not? So if because I'm only moving, the animation will only play when we have values, either a value is 0 or 1. That means we can't use the negative values of our axis. So we need to make sure that every value we take from the horizontal, it will be a positive one. So we simply use mathf.abs so that we get abs and befit. No, I'm kidding. So that we get the absolute value of our horizontal or of our float. So that is for the update animator. Let's see what we have done over here. So I'll hit play, and you see that I'm falling to the ground. If I press up, I'm jumping up. If I press left and right, I'm also moving. Now you will see that our gravity scale is at 5, and that makes a nice effect when we jump and we're jumping back down, but it feels a lot of pretty laggy when we move left or right. And also if I press the S, I'm crouching. Okay, so this is the basic movement. Now back to our gravity scale. So as I said, the 5 looks pretty good when we are on the air, but when we are on the ground it looks horrible. And if I change this to be at 1, you will see that he falls pretty low to the ground, pretty slow, but the movement works pretty great. So let's fix also that, and we will create a new function which we will say void on ground check. And this is going to be a pretty simple one, and we will say if we are not on the ground, then rigid body d dot gravity scale equals 5, else oops, come on, rigid body d dot gravity scale equals 1. Okay, of course we need to drop this inside the update over here, and let me see if we are going to need yes, we're going to need it. We're going to close the fixed update right now, but we will return later to this, and right now if I hit play, you will see that everything works as it should. And this is your basic movement. Now of course this can be used in different games. Now of course if I'm on the air and press the down, we have manipulated the position, the velocity. We manipulate the velocity. So with all this, let's go back into our scripts and let's start writing our attack logic. And we create a new function. I'm going to add it over here, and I will say this, I will name this attack input. Now of course before we do that, we need to add which variables we are going to use. First of all, we need to have a public float, which I'm going to name this attack rate, and I'm going to initialize it with 0.3. Now the attack rate is how fast the attack windows will close. So, okay, so how fast, how many seconds does the player have before pressing another attack button to make a combo. Now for me and the sprites we currently have, I found that 0.3 is a pretty good number. Now we need booleans for our attack, so instead of going boolean attack 1, attack 2, attack 3 and all that, attack 4 and so on, okay, instead of making all this mess, we'll just create an array and we will call this attack, and we will initialize this, and we're going to say it will have two values. Now even though we are writing 2 over here, keep in mind that arrays always start from 0. So we need the same thing we will do about attack timer, so we don't have to rewrite everything from the start, and we will say initialize this with 2, but we don't want the player to be able to spam the attack button. So if he keeps pressing the thing which was happening in Mortal Kombat, you know, when if you keep pressing the punch button, it will always be playing the attack animation. So we will add another array for our integers with integers, and we will say times pressed, and we will also initialize this with 2. Now we initialize this because we will get errors otherwise. Now if you want more attacks, you will change this to whatever number for how many attacks you need. So on all this, okay. Now we have our attack variables, so let's go write our function. So if input dot get button down attack 1 plus our player number dot to string, this we don't need this, then we want to turn the first attack. Keep in mind that even though this is attack 1, we take the first of the array, which is 0, and turn that to true. Take our attack timer, the first attack timer of course, and make that to 0, and the times pressed 0, we increment that, and now that we have our attack, we will say if attack if the first attack is true, then we take our attack timer, the first attack timer, and we start, not times pressed, adding by time dot delta time. And if our attack timer is the first attack timer is greater than our attack rate, or times pressed, how many times we pressed that, is the first of course in the array, is greater or equals, let's say 3. This will make him be able to press it 2 times, and the third one will make it false. So let's make this 4. So if the attack timer is greater than the attack rate, or it pressed enough times the button, then we take the attack timer, the first attack timer, and we make it 0. We take the first attack and we make it to be false, not false, and times pressed will be, of course, 0. Now copy paste all that as it is over here and paste it down below, and change the attack 1 we want to use the attack 2, and wherever you see 0 inside the array, you change the 0 to 1. Attack timer 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1. Now of course we have all this, but we need to also inform the animator. So we will go into update animator and we will say anim set bool attack 1 to be the same as the first boolean inside the attack array, and anim set bool attack 2 attack to be the same as the second boolean inside the attack array. Now probably you can store all this probably in a function and recycle all this, so you don't have to copy paste it once again, but since it works this way, who cares? So let's go back into Unity, and if I hit play right now, let's see where we have errors and why this gives us error. Let me see what the error is. And we forgot something somewhere, so let me see. If attack, and we probably have an extra somewhere. Wait a minute. Yes, this needs another. We forgot to add parentheses. So add that. Let's jump into. Let's see if this is cleared. It's clear. Let's jump into play once again. Let's move back. And now I can move, of course, and if I hit the attack button, nothing happens, and that nothing happens because we forgot to take the attack input and drop it inside the update. So let's play here. Now, never mind the warnings. We can move, and if I hit the attack 1 animation, you can see over here which is enabled. It plays the attack, and let's see, let's open this up a little bit so that you know what's happening. So I'm pressing one time the button. You see it plays the attack 0. It goes to the attack 0 animation state. Okay, I'm pressing it 1 and it moves back into idle. Let's add this over here. So I'm pressing one time, moves from idle to attack, and then back again. Now if I press it 2 times, you will see that it moves to the other animation, so it makes a combo. Okay, and if I press, if the second time I press the attack 2, see what I'm pressing, you can see what I'm pressing from over here. You can see that it continues a combo, and I can't keep pressing all the time. You see, it will open up. I'm pressing 4 times the attack 1 animation, and it plays 4 times this animation, and it returns back because we have our times pressed integer. We incremented that. Now another thing that it's nice to see is, now if I'm pressing the attack animation, you see it opens up the trigger colliders. Okay, and for each animation you will play a different trigger collider. Now these 3 attacks all have the same trigger collider, but if I crouch first and attack, you will see it plays the crouch attack, and he opens up a new trigger collider. Okay, and of course I can also jump, and if I hit attack, the attack, I don't have an attack 2, if I hit the attack 1, I can also attack in the air. Now this is heavily dependent upon the animator. Okay, so study this animator, how did everything in here, so you will know, and you can change the animation, the sprite with your own sprites, and you can create your own fighting game. Now that we have, of course, now that we have our attack function over here, what we need, what's the most logical step to do is, of course, create an enemy. Now let's go back into Unity, into Visual Studio. We have set up the variable for our enemy, so the next thing we need to do is go into Start, and let's close all that. Now before I do that though, let's go into Fixed Update, and let's add, now if you see, if I hit, even if I'm attacking, I can still move. Okay, we don't want that, so we need to go into Fixed Update, and we will say if attack is true and we are not jumping, or attack 1 second attack boolean is true and we are not jumping, then simply take the movement vector and make it all to be 0. Okay, this will fix And this, when we attack, we can't move. Okay, but if we are jumping, we can still move as we should. So let's go back into Unity, into Visual Studio, close fixed update. Let's go into start and see how we can find our enemy. Now, one thing we still know. Now, of course, we need to initialize the jump force. So never mind that. So, what we know about every player is that, of course, every player in the scene has the tag of player. So we can do game object dot find game objects with tag. Keep in mind, game objects. A lot of the errors I've seen, people get an enumerator error. It's that because you are using find game object inside an array, you're using this, and this is you missing the S over here. So we get all our players in the scene, and then we can say for each game object PL in players, then if the player transform is not equals this transform, so it's not ourselves, and if it's not ourselves, who else can it be than the enemy? So this is how we take the enemy. But now, of course, if I hit save, let's go back, I will duplicate my character over here, and I'm going to use to put it over here, and I'm going to change his player number to be 2. But now, as you see, comes a problem. I can move around, but wherever I jump either to his back or front of him or back of him, he is always looking at the same location. And I can also jump upon his face and create Counter-Strike towers. So let's fix that. We're going to create a new function, which we will call this void scale check. And inside this scale check, we can simply say transform.position if Rx is lower than the enemy x, then a transform.local scale will be let's initialize it, new vector 3 minus 1 1 1. Okay, else transform local scale equals vector 3.1. Vector 3.1 is the opposite of vector 3.0, which this creates a new vector 3 but with all values to be 1. And of course we need to drop this inside the update. Now I'm going to take my update animator and put him last. Okay, Ctrl S to save, and let's go back inside Unity. And as you see, I didn't have to even rotate him around. When I hit play, he moves, automatically changes his scale to move to the correct position. Now, of course, even if I do my brutality over here, he doesn't take any damage. Now, let's go back into script, and we'll create a new function. Now, before we create a new function, of course, let's add the variables first. And we will need a public boolean to be damage. We need to add a public float which we will call no damage. This is and add it to 1. This no damage will be how many seconds the player won't take any damage, and that we do that because we are using triggers. We might stay inside the trigger more than 2 frames, more than 1 frame that we actually want. So for every frame it will stay inside the trigger, it will be taking damage. Now we don't want that, so we make our character invisible for a short period of time, and we need an internal float so that we know we start counting when we do not, so that we stop being invisible. So let's add a new function. Let's add it after the attack input, and let's say void damage. Let's drop it inside the update right now, and we will say here if we take damage, if we took damage, maybe we take our no damage timer and we add to him with time.delta time, and if the no damage timer is greater than our no damage limit, then we want the damage to false, no damage timer to be 0. Now if you want to do it like if you are hit on the air, so if you are not on the ground, so if you are in the air, you can do something like this, but this will change the gravity scale, so your character will fall faster, and this will take the direction of the enemy and our position, and we add force to it to the different direction, so it will add force to a rigid body, so our player will move backwards if he's on the air. Now I don't really care for this, so I'm going to comment this out. So you can also add here, I'm not going to add statistics like health and stuff like that. You can add this all over here, and you can make another you can make a public float over here that will say damage to take, and add it inside where was it, inside our damage over here, and subtract from the health of your player from here. Now I'm not going to do that, that's pretty basic stuff. Okay, so we drop that inside our update, and let's go back. Now even if I hit play now, and if I go, of course if I hit him now, nothing happens, of course, but if I hit the trigger of damage over here, you will see that it will play the damage animation. Now the damage, we want the damage, as I said, to play from any state. Okay, so if damage equals if you take damage and you are on the ground, you play the damage from standing, and damage if you are not on the ground, the damage for fall. Now you can also add, if you don't want him to take damage when he's on the when he's attacking, you will also add this over here. So let's see how he can take damage. So we will go to our damage colliders, and we will create a new script which we will call this damage script. Open it up. So this is going to be a pretty simple one. We don't need either start or update. So we only want to use on trigger enter 2D collider 2D collider. So if the collider that we just is inside the trigger is not the same, does not have the same root as we do, so it's not our game object, and the collider dot tag is not equals and the collider tag is not equals ground, so it's not the ground we are hitting, and the collider we just hit is not a trigger, so it's not a damage collider of the enemy. We know that we hit and what did I, yes, this has to go. So we know that we didn't hit ourselves, we know that we didn't hit the ground, and we know that we didn't hit a damage collider of the enemy. We know that we hit the enemy, and we will need to take the collider.transform.get component player control, and if he hasn't already taken damage, and if you want your player to not be able to take damage on other cases, like if he's attacking, you will also need to do, you will add a check over here, and you will say if not damage attack and so on. Now of course, since we are using array, you will probably be better if you make a function that does all these checks and say if your character is can take damage or not. So I'm not going to do that, I'm just saying if you want to do it this way. So if he is not already taking damage, then take damage, and while you are here, go to the root of the collider, which is the collider you already have, so this might not be really important, and we want to take the animator, but we know that the animator is not in the root, so we need to take the animator from the children, and we add this, and we can say to him set trigger damage, and you can add how much damage it will take from over here. And I wrote children once again wrong. Component and Ctrl S to save. So we need to drop the script in all our colliders. So select all this and drop the damage script over there. And of course it will be also nice if our enemy can do us damage. And just like that, let's hit play. Let's move a little back. And if I move to him, if I attack him, you can see that he is. Now we have the invisibility frames. We have him to be at 1 second. So if I press it, if I keep mashing the button, you will see that for some seconds he doesn't take damage. So that's basically the attack. And of course, if I press the up button, I can also move. I've only set up the up and down for the other enemy. So if he is jumping, if he's in the air and I attack him, you will see that he plays a different animation than the regular one. Now the only problem we have right now is with the collider, because as you see, the collider just stays the same. Even if even if the enemy crouches, you will hit him like that. Now you can do it. There are a lot of ways you can do how the collider will open and close. You can either do it by script or do it with the animations. Now it's best if you use it the colliders, if you do it with the animations, but I forgot to do that and I was bored to change all these animations, so I'm just doing it this way and be done with it. So another thing you can do is use get components collider. So you get these colliders, and when you want, you simply change the open and close the collider you need. Now for your animations, just take these colliders and make another empty game object over here, right, and use these colliders, and just as our attack animations, just open and close it with the animation. Okay, now let's see the meat of the fighting games. Of course, are the special attacks. Now if we go to our special attack animation, you will see that not jump attack, the special attack animation is just this animation. Now we can either write all this by code and what it will happen, or we can just simply once again let the animations decide if they want to do something or not. So before we do all this, I'm going to create a new script, and I'm going to name this event holder. I will open this up. Now the only thing that we're going to use over here is a player control, which I'm going to call PL. Now of course I want the PL to be transform.get component player control. Now notice I'm not doing transform.parent because I want this to be at the same position. I want to be, even if it's way down the children, I want to be always taking the player control from the root of our parent, so this is a safer way to do it. And I'm going to delete this. And the only thing that we need to do over here is say public void, let's call this throw projectiles or projectile, and I'm going to go into our player control and we need to say, let's say, special attack equals true. Now of course this gives an error because we haven't added the special attack boolean. So back into player control, we will need to say special attack. It's going to be pretty simple. You can say public bool special attack, and of course you need a game object to instantiate as a projectile, and we will say public game object projectile. So let's add a new function. Let's call that special attack, and then let's go to special attack and let's say if special attack, we want to create a new game object, or actually instantiate a game object. So we do instantiate the projectile. Let's just use our transform.position and quaternion.identity. I don't care about his rotation, and I will do that as game object. Now we want to normalize his direction, not normalize, I want to level his y. So if I do new vector 3 and I'm going to take the direction of our player to our character, so we create a new direction which we take the y, not yield, we take the x of the enemy, so, and we take the y position of our transform. Okay, so that it doesn't go diagonally, it will only go towards to the front. So we create, now that we have the new direction, we want to take the transform dot position. We find the direction between our position and its position, and then simply we take the component of that game object and we add force to it. Let's the direction, let's multiply that by 10, and let's say force mode 2D dot impulse, and close that. And of course we want this to happen only one frame, and we add the special attack to return false. Now I want to take the function, of course, and drop it inside update. But now we need to somehow trigger this event, so it will come over here and run the special attack logic we have right. So we can go back into Unity and into our animation. We can add, let's add it at 10 seconds. We can add, now before I do that, on the same place where we have the animator, we need to drop our event holder. Now this is pretty important, of course. Okay, so on my special attack I will add a new event and you will see this window pop up which has a function and search. It needs to search for a function. Now of course this let me see why it didn't update, and that's probably something that I missed. So over here, special attack, add trigger, function, throw projectile. So whenever this animation plays and it reaches this keyframe, it will call this function, and with this function goes into our player control script and calls the special attack and does all the things we have inside. Now we use a keyframe because you might want to do let's say I don't remember which game was it. If you say something like in Dragon Ball where you power up the fireball and then you throw it. Now instead of just throwing it right from the start, you can change this, drag this around and put it exactly where you want it. So if you have 2 frames, you can put that in the second frame, in the second sprite, and it will play, it will look correct. So the last thing we need to do for today is of course create a prefab for our projectile. Now I've already created one. It's like this. Let's rotate it so that it looks the correct way, or let's just simply change his direction. So this prefab, this projectile, the only thing it needs to have is of course a sprite renderer, a rigid body 2D, and a box collider, which can also be a trigger. And if we drop our damage script, inside the projectile, if we drop a damage script, now probably this will take our player to attack it. Oops. Yeah, we have to apply it, okay, and then delete it, and then go into each player and drop it inside the projectile slot. And if I hit play, now of course I forgot to say inside the animator. So from any state we set up here what needs to happen for a special attack. Now in my case, I want if the player crouch is true, so we know that the player is holding the down button, and if the attack 1 and attack 2 is also true, it means that the player hit the combination of the down button, the first attack and the second attack all at the same time, or pretty close, in a close proximity to each other. Okay, you can change this around to anything you want, or make the transition, instead of from any state, you can make the transition from any other place you want to do. Okay, transitions play a pretty big role in this how we set it up our controllers. Okay, so let's see the final thing we have to do. Let's go back into our scene, and you will see that if I press the down and the two attacks together, you can see that I'm throwing a projectile. Now of course I forgot to make a destroy function, but that's pretty simple to do. And that's it for today's video. We see how we can make controllers, how we can move around, how to throw projectiles, how to jump, how to variable jump, how to make special attacks. We get ourselves more familiar with mechanism and its transitions. Now don't forget to create a destroy for all this, because this can become pretty troublesome, pretty easy. So that was it for today. A pretty big video. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can support me on patreon.com/C#accent, all letters, where with $5 or more you can get access to a Google folder with all our scripts and some additional notes and guidelines inside the scripts. So thanks for watching once again, and I'll see you probably Wednesday with some new stuff, or old. I'm going to see. I might make the next video might be the node editors part 3. I will see. I'm pretty close into releasing our game right now, so I don't have a lot of time to prepare stuff about this, but we will see in later videos what cool things we can do. And this is actually pretty good how this came out. Now don't forget to study the animator, how you can do it over here, and experiment with your own ways and your own combos. And that is all. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.